Good morning. Once again, this is the morning time while I do this recording in advance for the class of next week. And the reason I'm doing this for you guys so much ahead of the time, one is because I believe this particular class will carry a little more weight of importance compared to the other classes, because this is basically telling the students about the technology in the realm of supply chain management evolved in the past 30, 40 years, where it is going into, and of course your major or this whole program is SCMT. So once again, we're emphasizing on the T, the technology. And the other reason is we all are in the special difficult times of this virus, and we are all doing our best to deal with it. So to comply with the government or the municipal government lockdown order, some of you have to deal with a little more challenge that may not be equally presented to all the students or other students in terms of health condition or financial challenges. So with that comprehension in place, I would not and I will not maintain otherwise the mandatory requirement on the I guess the class schedule bond duties, which specifically means here, let me elaborate that as long as you watch this video, it doesn't have to be the the specific time otherwise for the old classroom time, like between 5:30 and 7. You can watch before or long before the class time, and this is why I'm recording this now on this Monday for next Tuesday, so you would have a lot more flexibility, basically find the time and watch so you learn. And this is definitely one class you don't want to miss. Okay. Once again, this is actually more important than the other classes within the same course. So in this class, we're going to talk about TMS and WMS, which is basically short for transportation management software and the warehousing management software. Now, both of them, they could come out as the what we would say or we would call stand-alone software, meaning you don't have to have those as a module, right? Working with your ERP if your employer already implemented one, whether that is Oracle or SAP, basically the main, streamed options. Of course, Oracle is the American homegrown baby, and the SAP is the German thing, European in broader, sense. But of course, if you are working for a conglomerate, basically operate around the globe, it makes no difference, American or European, and they pretty much have very similar functions, right? So anyway, back to the TMS and WMS. Before we talk about those, specific modules, because basically you would have the basic functions as a ERP, and then you have the modules extended certain functions, extended in certain directions, right? So ERP before the ERP, there was actually an older version. It was basically grandpa and papa and son or daughter, whatever. So MRP was, I'm presuming, was a manufacturing resource planning. And then the ERP, enterprise, right? So not just the manufacturing, other enterprises started to use it again. I mean, it seemed to be a good idea, right? So in both cases, it ended with the word planning. So you can see planning is actually pretty important, function for business operation. And now that we're on the word planning, I think it probably helps to bring up the two different type of I guess concepts in two different economic and political systems. What is, in essence, a communist economy is all about? It's a planning economy, right? So in a communist state, the government is supposed to be covering everything, planning for everything, even birth control, right? Do you get the right to have a baby? Well, that's not up to you to decide in a real communist state, right? The government decides everything, planning everything. Oh, population, population control, right? So I used to work in a state-owned business in a communist state. And I was a quality control inspector. So I was conducting chemical exams in the labs every day, in and out. This was before I even got the chance to go into the Maritime Academy. So I was in the, basically working for a pharmaceutical manufacturer. So this was back in the hardcore communist times, and the planning economy, basically how it worked was Company A manufactured this thing, and the supplies all come from, for each individual subcategory will come from the Company B, and then another subcategory, Company C. And then this Company A basically either supply to the appointed buyer, okay? D in this case, and then E, or just, send directly to the state government. The government distribute. So in the old communist system, there is no real sales. Okay, not from this guy trying to sell him, or this guy trying to sell to other people. No, it's basically all planning. So it's the government decided, okay, John, you supply to Jack, and Jack, your products, coming out of the material from there, you manufactured, and your product sell to Mary. So that's how it works. Did it work? Well, not in my personal experience, because at one specific, and this is very, very interesting. Okay, I want to be polite, so I use the word interesting. The raw material came into the factory, the pharmaceutical factory I was working at. This one particular one. After my test, that was the stuff that came into the yard. It was a 55, steel drum contained with this old chemical stuff. And basically, I sampled a little bit and took back to the lab and tested. Guess what? 2%, 2 out of 100 would pass our, standard that we could actually use. In other words, 98% all wasted. We could not return back to the supplier, because I asked the older guys, like, hey, do we get to return all this back to them? Because they did such a lousy job. And they're like, really? You want to return back? And then if they get pissed, you don't even get the 2%. Because who do you get this supply from? It's decided by the government. And you disturb this supply chain, the government will not be able to help you, because you're the one with the big mouth. Oh, I'm like, oh, okay. So that is the communist planning for you, okay? Does it work? Well, go to Cuba, go to North Korea, find out. I'm not going to comment on what is Chinese economy today because they still maintain it's a socialist. Okay, cool. So that was the planning, in a communist economy. So let's talk about the American, which is, of course, capitalist. Do we plan? Yes, we do. Okay, but when you think about the planning, there are all different kinds of planning. Okay, this planning is the word, resource planning tells you the whole thing. It has nothing to do with what I was teaching about the project logistic operation planning. That's totally different. Why is that different and where is that different? Project logistic operation planning is all about identify the risks and the risk mitigating measure options. That is planning for logistic, operation management. Now back to the resource planning. So we have the MRP, and which basically graduated from this thing and retired itself, in time. And then we have the ERP, and we have certain very famous institutions, education institutions. They have the authority over this thing. They have the academic paper published in millions. It all sounds like a great thing. And I'm going to give you one story, okay? And this was one of the biggest enterprises, business operation in the world. The president of this unit, okay, they have hundreds of units. I worked for one of them. The president of this unit, after like 3-4 years of implementation of Oracle, told everybody at presence, the heck with the ERP. We're going back to where we came from. In other words, he totally failed implementation of the Oracle. Was it the problem Oracle created this chaos? No. First, let's talk about, Oracle, SAP, same thing, ERP. Okay, if you're like an IT guy, when you design something like that, what do? Can you design specifically to suit certain company? There's no way you can do that because you have to know enough about that certain company's culture, right? So each company, founded by different people, and they brought in their own personal philosophy, business philosophy, and lots of other philosophies. So the business operation style reflect that kind of philosophy, right? And that philosophy, basically just passed down to different level of management and different generations. It becomes a, corporate culture, right? So what works in company A, most likely, and personal experience, definitely not work in the other company. Why? Because even their competitions in the same industry, in the same sector, the way they operate, typically different. Okay, this is what we call business practice process, okay? So in this company, the guy don't believe in it, analytics. Like, what are we talking about? Basically, hey, I've been doing it forever. Just listen to me. Everything will be okay. That was the case. I just mentioned that person said, of that company said, the heck with ERP. We're going back where we came from. What a cowboy, man. Anything wrong? No. If your experience, intuitively accumulated actually works better, who needs that computer stuff? Computer sounds smarter, but only if you make it smarter. It could be really dumb. So I'm not really criticizing that person. If that business operation works better with his experience, there's no point to copy other people, right? So that was one incident, basically to tell you, what that thing is. Now, why people even really need an ERP? There's several reasons. Well, one thing could pretty, sum it up, which is basically to create operational transparency, on the whole process, right? So what does that mean? Okay, so let's say you're in a manufacturing place or a wholesale or retail or whatever industry, right? You will need to know, okay, this whole chain from the beginning at, you know, the link A all the way to link Z, each and every, point. Are they going through smoothly? Are they actually working like with their maximum the capacity, matched? So there's no waste anywhere, basically there's a node, a node, a node, a node, basically all the nodes, put together is the process. They need to know every node, the status, hopefully near real time. With ERP, you can't do the real time. So anyway, when all the, I guess the business managers put in their data, becomes the input to the system, the higher management level or the accounting people or the cost control people, they start to get some idea of what is going on with all these nodes of the process or all the links on this chain, right? So that sounds really good as a concept academically. But here's the thing. The IT folks say, garbage in, garbage out. So I have been around, right, between different bigger and medium-sized companies. I've never seen one case that ERP, I don't care, Oracle or SAP, I've experienced both of them. I never saw them working perfectly the way that is designed to work. Why? Because people, they put in the data, okay? They think it's a burden, right? So they put something, in the first place, that may not be real, okay? That's just something, okay, that's my job, put it in there. It's like you dump your, garbage into trash. A lot of them did that way, and I'm not exaggerating. I actually know those folks who did that. And sometimes they forgot conveniently, okay? So if you don't update your, real status with the real data, what you put in there is a false information. And when you have this whole thing in a linear system, okay, remember node by node by node by node, all you need is one that is not either updated or not entirely true, okay? So what is that big picture telling whoever needs to know? You get it? That's the problem. That's the flaw of ERP. In fact, any computer system, like I said, garbage in, garbage out. So when you have ERP like that, now let's go back to the what I mentioned a little earlier about the basic functions, right? So like I said, any IT folks design any enterprise level software, unless this is like a custom design, which is impossible, it's too expensive. It is designed on the basis of what we call, generic. Generic means it's not specifically, suiting to everybody, but it's quite a general. So if this company, that company, and that company, I'm right here, okay? You have to establish the link to connect to each and every single individual. So if I just buy this, skeleton, the base functions of the ERP software, how much would that cost? Roughly about $2 million back then. I don't know. I'm not very updated to that. Personally, I'm not a big believer of that system because I was on the team of implementation, which I'll talk about shortly. So this skeleton system, you buy it, can you make it to 100% use without any other further, I guess, customization? Absolutely not. Because that thing just, when something is good for everybody, it's good for nobody. Because you can't not really use it, right? So people have to do the customization. So customization is almost, it's not mandatory. Hey, folks, after $2 million initial investment, you can do whatever you want with it. We, as the developer of the ERP, we're not going to force anything upon you. But then you already spent it, first $2 million. And then you ask questions, oh, how can I make this work? How can I make that work? The sales support engineer say, oh, sir, that's not in there. You will need to have the customization. And by the way, that costs a few more millions. So the management decide, okay, now that we already made the decision, we're going to go into this. Let's just make more investment. And so we go. The company that I worked at, they thrown $20 million after the customization. Okay. So the customization basically is to put the design engineers, back to the, I guess you call it a whiteboard or drawing board or whatever it is. Basically, they would send a team of people called bridging business analysts come to talk to your department managers in all the different functions. What they're trying to do is understand your practice, the business practice, in your operation. How does everything work? So they interview the managers and get feedback, and then they go back and then they do a very customized process, basically supposedly reflecting how everything works in your company. When they're done with that, all the managers are going to be drafted to join what they call implementation team, and I was on one of those teams. Basically, you learn their best practice process, because supposedly after they learn your outstanding practice, they're going to teach you what is the best practice without the change management. Okay, folks, that's the problem. When you tell me how to run my business and you're an IT guy, you think I take it seriously? But when this implementation is actually enforcing a best practice, which is, by the way, is really good. It's just how you do it, though. So this best practice-based ideal operation routine, somehow customized to your process, shove it down your throat. And you're on the implementation team. You're like, okay, I'll work with you. So from this point on, your function is supposed to work the way the new style defined for you. And do you think you really are that happy? No, because people by human nature resist any change. So when you implement anything that is big change, you need a change management, to be implemented. And that's an initiative by itself. And that's what is typically missing in the implementation of ERP at many places that I basically had a direct experience with. So what I have just told you is why this is not working perfectly, because from the design point, right? When I say design, I'm talking about the customization, okay, the SOP process, best practice, all that. You already have some flaws there. And then to implement it, there's a lack of a lot of things there, okay? So, and then because of all that, passed down to the point where other guys basically put their data in, and they took a lot of liberties. So what is supposed to, the way it's supposed to work and what is actually working, there's a gap. And there is the reason why ERP does not work the way it is supposed to or designed. So we talk about the ERP, right? And let's see. I will just talk a little more about ERP before I move on to a WMS, okay? So the ERP actually, like I just mentioned, they are implemented and they're working with the flaws, we talk about it, in America that there are some dysfunction of families, right? So I think the business operations with the ERPs are, in a lot of, cases, by my own personal observation, experience, is this turn that business place into a dysfunctioned family because I actually I don't, yeah, I can't give you names, but I saw a lot of companies, the purchase manager, the logistic manager, the whatever manager, okay, production operation, they don't really take this thing, ERP, seriously. And we're talking, what, 30, 40 years history of this ERP thing, and implemented in the last 10, 20 years. It never worked the way it's supposed to, okay? That's that. I'll leave it there. And then we have the WMS, and I will report a better news for you because WMS has been working perfectly comparing to, this is in comparison, right? Comparing to ERP itself. Why? At warehousing organizations, especially in the US, I never had the experience in Europe or Asia how that worked, WMS in those business places, but I did in the US. It works really well because consider the fact the warehousing managers typically they don't have undergraduate degree in America. I doubt in Europe, but they actually adapted the technology really well. You walk into their operation, you ask them about the numbers and basically the efficiencies, effectiveness. They actually give you lots of numbers. I mean data. So you ask them, hey, what's the shrinkage rate? They'll tell you, oh, ours is about 0.4%. Okay, if they give you that number, by practice, I think that's pretty good already. But I actually knew some Taiwanese business operator with their huge distribution center. They didn't have ERP or WMS. Everything was manually managed by a bunch of old ladies. They achieved 0.1%. I was amazed. Okay, so anyway, back to the point. They would start from what it's called the when you take in from your shipping channel a truck back into a shipping channel, and you unload from the truck, put in the staging space. At this point, this is the first order of the business. You scan the thing, and then you basically allocate where it's gonna go into your warehousing area, basically marked area, and basically a slot allocated for certain items that you just received. Okay, so basically everything is a very clearly defined process, and this WMS actually take you through the whole process. All you have to do is just follow. And like I said, those warehousing managers without any special education other than the high school diploma, they did really well. Okay, they can actually talk to you in terms of operational data. They can give you the pretty accurate reflection on what's going on. So I think comparing to the ERP, the WMS works way a lot better. And WMS, like I said, could be a standalone software. You can buy it cheaper from a smaller vendor if their support is there, right? Oh, I forgot to tell you, the term for that first piece of action when you pick up the stuff at your door of the warehouse is called at hand report. Okay, at hand report. So that basically registers into the system, and the system allocate based on the weight, the dimensions. So because each salt on your cargo shelves, it's all predefined. So that would allocate. I'm just giving you some random ID. Say ABC 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, that means it's a slot allocated in the area T, section Y, and then that ABC 1, 2, 3, 4 you can find. Okay, and once this basically admitted into the inventory cycle, is it like you never hear it, anything about it again? No, you run what they call the cycle. Okay, so basically just checking is everything there where it's supposed to be, and then you get what they call the cycle report. And if, let's say, your internal customers say, oh, I need this and that, okay, so you go into the WMS and you check, this is put into the slot of ABC 1, 2, 3, 4 on, let's say, January 22nd, 2019. It has been there, and based on the last cycle report, it is still there, right? So what was the shrinkage? That was, for some reason, somehow the warehouse sometimes just couldn't identify where a certain thing is. So the chances of those missing stuff that you cannot relocate or discover falls into that shrinkage rate. So when people need to pick this up, there's another report, okay? And this action of trying to find something and deliver it to the internal customer is called a pick ticket, okay? So they want you to pick it up, and there's a ticket for it. It's plain English, formal English. So basically, I just give you the whole WMS, how it works, and why I think it works really well. And that covers WMS. Let's see, do we have anything else here around this one? Okay, so that was WMS, and then the TMS. The TMS, I think I mentioned before, is the transportation management system or software. In terms of implementation, a lot of companies do not have it. Am I a big believer of transportation management system? Yes and no. Depends on what kind of business you're in. If you're in the retail, I think it pays to have one. If you're in the, basically, you use a lot of trucks, and the logistic, operation pattern is pretty much basically, if not the same, at least very similar between each and every operation, right? So that you stick to the certain transportation mode, I think you should have it. But like I said, I'm mostly in the heavy manufacturing, energy, oil, and chemical, and of course upstream sector. So I never had a direct experience using the transportation mode because basically couldn't use it. In other words, let me rephrase it. You cannot rely on the TMS for your entire logistic operation planning, no, or implementation or execution, no. Because it's basically the scope of TMS and the scope of logistic operation management, operation planning is this. It's just a small circle within a big circle. So having TMS in those situations just mentioned, it doesn't pay, okay? It's just a hassle. Sorry, I would say that. But now, we already talked about the MRP, ERP, and TMS, WMS. Now we're onto something actually important. You better remember this. When people are so worked up to collect data, data, and these days we have big data technology. If you don't do anything with it, or you don't do it right, you don't know how to make what is good data as versus what is bad data, it's not good for nothing, okay? Who cares is it ERP or MRP or whatever? So when you collect a whole bunch of data, one, it's not up to date, and two, it may not reflect the truth because a lot of people just twist it and feed you a bunch of garbage. What is the big picture you're looking at? Very, very blurry, okay? It's not the true picture you want. So what do you do with all this data? Even though it's not, oh, let's say it's imperfect data. A good ERP obviously has to have some kind of analytic capacity. So SAP, from the day one when they roll out the SAP as an ERP, they had a BI module. BI is short for business intelligence, which is basically analytical. Okay, so all the other systems basically, oh, I took in some data and it's there. So the BI module basically, oh, I'm going to do some model analysis. Okay, so the data input, run in the model, and then data output, right? Give you some business intelligence reports. Sounds nice, but once again, dirty data, you gotta cleanse it, okay? Qualify it before you move on to the, quantitative studies. So anyway, that's BI, right? So Oracle, when you first roll out, the owner of that, back then at that time, the new start business, had no vision about this BI. And then later, by the competition with SAP, I guess he realized something was missing. So what did they do? Instead of develop their own, and that, I think, business-wise was a smart move. He acquired a, used to be an independent business called JD Edward, which is basically the BI function. So that BI independent software becomes a BI module for Oracle. Yeah, they all have the BI now. And like I said, does that help? It's better than not to. But does it solve all the problem? I doubt it, personally. Because, we already talked about how the whole thing started, how the data was generated, how they're being used. There's a lot of flaw right in there, right? This is like you're making a cake. Well, trust me, I never made a cake, so this is a bad analogy from me. But let's say you use the powder. Okay, the powder, somehow on the desk or whatever the island on the surface, mixed up with some other foreign objects, and you tried to take it out, but there's no way you could 100% clean it out. So you made the cake with it, and you take your first bite, fresh out of the oven, you're like, ugh, what is that? Well, it just so happened you got some foreign object in your mouth. That's how it works with the ERP, the TMS, the BI, okay? The problem's inherited from the first step of this long process. So now, what is going on now? Oh, we have the AI. Oh, big deal. And we have the enhanced deep learning. That is another big deal, my friends. So how does that work? AI is supposedly work, okay, imitating how the human brain works, okay? But as far as the science development where it is today, 90%, I want to say, I don't have the exact number, you have to Google it up, but 90% of how the human brain works is still in the mystery, okay? Let's say we have 10% understood. So AI is a copycat. The copycat at this point is pretty stupid because compared to the human brain, I'll throw a little analogy here. I have a German Shepherd. Every day when I walk that German Shepherd out there in my neighborhood, when he hears something, he started going like this, okay? Immediately, right away on alert. And when he saw something, even just something, in the shadow, kind of a sticky figure, he gets on high alert. Why? Because that's a risk he identified right away, right? And if he's hear the same noise again and again, or see the same thing again and again, and he did not have the direct experience of his own associated with that signal, okay, either by visual sight or the sound signal, then he tells himself, okay, this is not problem. So next time he relax. And every time when we pass certain door of my neighbor where they had dogs in there. Long before we reach there, long before the dog on the other side make any noise, my dog, he's getting ready to attack. So what does that tell? That tells even the dog, forget human, even the dogs, their little brain, they actually have a lot of analysis going on. What is the risk signal I captured, and then process right here. Okay, do I have any experience in the back of my mind, not my ass, but my mind? No bad experience? Once, twice, 3 times? Okay, I can proceed now, without getting on the high alert. So dogs have that. Do you think AI have that? Here is a big if. If the human, okay, teach, but the term here, the professional term is called train. If the human train the AI system with all this, the AI system will execute the way, it's trained. In other words, the AI does not, at least until today, does not have the capacity to think, okay, by itself. It's a pretty sophisticated process. AI still, even is artificial intelligence, the artificial is actually pretty today dumb, because you're really a copycat, and pretty dumb copycat, right? Very limited. Why? Because the science today has not figured out the 90% of how this thing works. And then you want a copycat to be this? No. But then some folks will say, hey, wait. Remember that the Go, let's call it contest or a big game between that Korean young master of Go in this computer system from, I'm not going to name the company. And the computer system, basically achieved a big victory over the human. Okay, here, let me explain. That's called a logic. Okay, that's not real thinking. That's a logic. What's a logic? Well, I'm just going to say, some of you have experienced this slot machine. That's a logic. Okay, it looked very random to you, but no, it's actually designed logic. You have the mathematic probability to hit it. Okay, so this goes this way, this way, this way, this way. At one point, that's the jackpot. And if you just so happen, you know how to get there, hit the jackpot. Oh, you see that, little tokens keep coming. You win. That's logic. Logic is basically a process, how it goes. So AI is a logic, okay? So with the logic, I'm going to use the analogy directly related to our course. When I do the project logistic planning, okay, operation plan, I identify easily hundreds of risks, and each risk corresponds to at least several options of mitigating measures. With my brain, what is my computation power to actually get all this worked out? You can kill me, but I can't really do it one by one. It's just so boring. And can I do it? Yes. Give me the time. This is why I mentioned before. The U.S., forget U.S., so let's use some different. The Soviet Union Army Marshal worked 4 years on the plan to invade Czech Republic. And they eventually got used in 1968. The Soviet troops invaded Czech. So why do you think 4 years? Because all those random, possibilities of this and that. So for the human to work out all those scenarios, it takes too much time. But AI with the computer technology today, remember, I'm an IT guy, so I guess I know a little more than the folks who are not IT people. With the computer technology today, the computation power is definitely beating the human brain. So once you give a specific logic and you feed it to the computer, basically does all this mega computation that human, your computation power is very limited compared to the computer system. Now that's where AI actually makes more sense and actually could beat the human brain, right? And another thing is, so we're the human, right? So we designed the algorithm. Well, I have to tell you, I'm not capable of doing that, but my colleagues, my partners on some of my teams, they are. They got a fancy PhD degree just for that, and I don't have it. Okay, but human can do this algorithm, which is important to have. You feed it to the AI system. If you train it right, okay, teach the system can come up with its own, okay, regenerate the new algorithm based on your original algorithm. Now that's AI, okay? So with that, AI, if you know how to use it, you can actually make a lot of things that's otherwise not available through the pure or sheer human power, right? But what I don't want you to think is, oh, AI is everything. No, far from everything. AI eventually, I hope, one day becomes the wisdom. And then wisdom is what? You have the knowledge, okay? And you know how to use the knowledge. Here's an analogy, okay? I guess it's a probably political correct word to say. Some undereducated folks, they can, if in America, okay, in the USA, they can speak American with, I say American because British English, they have different vocabularies and expressions, okay. So some undereducated folks speak 300 American words, effectively communicate, right? They're like, cool, man, I dig, man, that's good. This works for everything. Or just, yup, you bet. This can actually answer a lot of questions, right? You don't need all that fancy expression. Like, under the circumstance, given all things considered, blah, blah, blah. You can define yourself. You know, if you're a lawyer, you better do, right? You don't want to leave any loopholes. But, hey, I'm just a layman, man. That's how I talk, okay? So you ask me things, yup, or nope. Hey, just these 2 words. You can answer hundreds of questions, right? Until they chase you down. That's what I'm talking about. The AI system, one day, okay? I'm not trying to say be dumb, but know how to use the limited knowledge, okay, apply to a lot of things, right? Does it help to have all these fancy words and this great expressions? Of course it does. Okay, when you're doing a legal document or whatever it is, the government official, documents, policies, you better define, because otherwise you're under attack. But once again, wisdom is basically how to put the best use of the knowledge to everywhere appropriately. Now let's talk about the deep learning. Deep learning is a smart learning system. What is smart? And I'm not bragging, okay? Until I was in my 40s, I read one textbook about 150 pages, 8 hours, and memorize everything. I don't know how much I can do today. Probably not up to the same standard. So that's why people, from time to time, they call me, smart guy. What is smart? When you're at my age, smart means nothing, okay? But I pick up things a little faster than average. So deep learning basically is a smart learning system, okay? When you have to read, they skip million times more capacity than yours. That's smart. So am I going to be smart in compared to this enhanced deep learning system? Absolutely not. No comparison. Okay. So why would that make sense? This is very important, this part. I consider myself a very well-rounded, logistic professional, given my background. 1PL, 2PL, 3PL, 4PL. I've done them all. Okay? Procurement? Yes. Supply chain management? Basically cover it all. Do I have a well-rounded operational background? Yes, I do. Compared to the other folks who don't have such a, comprehensive background, my knowledge is pretty good about what? Project logistic management operation, right? Related upstream sector, onshore. So we define a sphere or scope, right? Like I said, I believe I'm pretty comprehensive here. But do I have anything? I have the knowledge, but do I have the first-hand experience in offshore? Nope. Do I have I have a knowledge again, but do I have the first-hand experience on midstream, downstream logistic? Nope. So what does that tell you? If you put my knowledge to apply for everything, there's some blanks there. Okay, so now we form a team, right? And then I pick up guys with, and pick on their brain, on their offshore, on the midstream, downstream, put together. What would you call that process? It's called institutionalize the knowledge, because before institutionalize, it's all individually, accumulated knowledge. So there has to be some blank somewhere need to be filled. So this is important to have the institutionalization of the process to make your knowledge body, more complete. And then before the institutionalization, I call that fragmented knowledge. So even though my knowledge was really good, but it's only defined in a very narrow scope. So it still need to add more to, okay? And so that's an integration process, between different operational background, the guys, ladies, and integrate them and institutionalize the knowledge, right? Now we still have a problem. Why? This is, let's just say, today, you walk out of your door, you feel so hot and humid. In my experience, as a good old Texan, they're like, it's gonna rain. Are you all right? Well, even the professional service, they don't tell you it's gonna rain, yes or no. They tell the probability, very mathematic, right? So why that? That means you don't know for a fact it's going to do, right? So when that happens, what is missing in the process of this integration, institutionalization? The cognitive pattern needs a questioning in the process. In other words, everything you say, I should ask, really? So when you say, today's going to rain, I'm going to ask you, really? Well, that makes you think, doesn't it? I'm like, well, instead of it's going to rain, let me rephrase it. Most likely it's going to rain. So what is this questioning process, does to this knowledge accumulation? So when you tell the next guy next time, you won't say, it's going to rain. You say, well, by my own direct experience, looks like it might rain today. That's a knowledge for you. So when the next guy try to use this knowledge, they know the limit, they know the condition. Not like, absolutely, oh no, I'm telling you, it's gonna rain. No, it's not like that, okay? So, we're talking about this knowledge, right? So that's what I was saying about the enhanced deep learning. So if this deep learning is trained in a process to include the questioning process, okay, for the cognitive, I can't speak English today, cognitive pattern of study, then I think is a lot more reliable and accountable, right? even by nature, it's really just the integration, institutionalization of all those fragmented, intuitively accumulated human knowledge. So this smart learning system will actually turn it from intuitively accumulated into analytically tested, proven, and developed knowledge. What does that mean? I'll give you an example, and I think it's very important in our supply chain management. Let's say you're going to start a system tomorrow, and I'm designing an online automated operation management platform, right? But I find out in certain subcategory, the scope of information and data just not enough historical data for me to establish certain pattern, and nevertheless to have the model analysis for it. I don't have enough input, let alone good input, so forget output, right? So if I have this deep learning system, actually, use the big data, somewhere else, get it, and then put this in there. So started feeding my model to give me something to start with from the blank. At the beginning, it's not going to be very precise. It's very, I would say, sketchy. But in time, you just get it, working. And then you start to have the real data coming in, because once your platform starts working, people start to have the, real data coming in. So this model basically keep recycling the data. Well, what's the output on that side? Back, reuse it as input, and just keep recycling. And then you have more and more real operational data coming in. So in the tendency, in a trend, this knowledge is getting more and more precisely. So when first time Google give you something, it may or may not be even right. You probably know better than Google. But after Google, searched, and a lot of people used, so they're giving you the answer while they're actually taking in information too. So the answer they give you after all these recycles just keep improving, getting better and better. So now when you Google things, which have been done zillions of times, that answer is pretty accurate, right? So it works the same way. So if I'm designing something, I don't have the, human intuitively accumulate the knowledge to give me all this to support. That's okay. I'll start with something, even a little sketchy at the beginning, but hey, with the deep learning system, I will be able to analytically, basically collect this and that. So we're on the subject, and I do need to point out, big data system, you gotta qualify it first. You can't just, I'm gonna give you an example. Let's say the big data statistically prove among 5 million folks, their record of, let's say, a certain health record, let's say lung cancer. And how many percent of them smoke? How many of them don't smoke, right? So the big data draw the conclusion right here. Oh, because this group and that group, and you compare, the big data believes if you smoke, you get lung cancer. Is that right? Maybe, but I would personally argue, wait, there are a lot of other factors. Did you even look at to qualify that big data? Among those two groups that you got, how many of them have the DNA in their family history that their grandparents, their great-great-grandparents actually had lung cancer? That's a factor you cannot ignore, can you? So that's what I mean by qualified data, especially the big data. You use it wrong, my goodness, that you could be way wrong at the end of the process. So that's what we talked about, the AI, the deep learning, the big data, all these big, fuzzy words. Okay, let's see if anything left. We are actually right into the hour. Well, basically that covers the whole thing in exactly on the hour. So what I want to say is when you do your video presentation, make sure you have the real comprehension of this class. And you do need to do a lot of Google search, and you need to do I guess some kind of research to understand what is all the concept tossed around in this class today, and to watch some YouTube video related to this. Okay, I do have the homework listed on Blackboard, which is basically about the WMS, the ERP, but I did not put any specific homework YouTube video on that. But what I'm telling you now is you do need to Google and do a little research on what does AI and the big data and deep learning do for supply chain management today. Okay, find out about that. That's not the homework for this class, but that is something I do expect you to use it in your video presentation. Personally, I hope you could impress your future hiring manager with the knowledge of this, because basically, let's face it, everybody, they're going to have to face this challenge to transition their workforce from today to today. What do I mean by that, from today to today? The second today is the technical today. The first today is the calendar today, but technology-wise, it's yesterday. Okay, they need to make that transition. So, not because you grasp some concept from this class today, but you are supposed to keep doing this self-guided study, ongoing, and learn things about it. So this is where you beat the undergraduate student from other schools that's majored in supply chain management, hopefully. That's my contribution. And you want to use this and make sure your future hiring manager understand you are the one with the envision, of what's going on, what's going to happen, and you have the mindset that's basically ready for it. And you are the kind of new blood they are looking for. Okay? So, stay safe. As I always say, stay safe for the sake of yourself and your loved ones. And you need any kind of help for, that kind of handling. You need help from, I don't know, University of Houston or the municipal government side. You will have someone as a communicator to help you in your behalf. I'm here, ready for you, okay? Don't hesitate to contact me if you do have such help need, okay? All right, so other than that, ciao for this class.